What's going on, you guys? Slim here with a new video today, and as the title says, we are going to talk about how to side deck in order to beat Eldlich. If you guys are new here, consider subscribing, hit that notification bell. You guys will be notified whenever I upload. You guys will also be notified whenever I stream over on Twitch. Links in the description. Come through. We stream almost every day, at least 3 to 4 times a week, and it's always a great time. But yeah, we already know Eldlich Invoked. Any version of Eldlich with Golden Boy down here has been one of the most prominent decks this format, this online format. Now, first and foremost, a lot of people like to disregard the online format. You cannot do that. You have to also look at the fact that the players that are playing these decks are the same players you would see at the top tables topping the YCSs if they were going on right now. Due to coronavirus, obviously we don't have any events, so online is our only avenue to get information. However, I feel that it's important that we do pay attention to what goes on at the PPG tournaments as well as the luxury card gaming series. I think all those tournaments are extremely important. Any locals you play online, any type of tournament will give you meta results, and it's stuff you can go with. So this list we've compiled is pretty big. Actually, it's a lot bigger than the first one, so hopefully it's better than the first video. The first video did okay, but I want to make this video a little bit better for you guys, give you guys a lot more options. And of course, like the first video, just down here I just have one of each of the Eldlich cards, just for those of you who aren't familiar with them. Of course, Golden Boy is your main guy. These summon them from the deck. You guys already know this card's insane. Then you have all your traps that basically just turn into, you know, extra monsters that have trigger effects if you have Golden Boy, all that stuff. The counter trap as well. So just stuff for you guys to know. But we're going to go into each of these cards. I'm going to talk about their applications in that matchup. I think it's important that we all know that. So we will start with Dimension Shifter. So I know Dimension Shifter is probably the oddest one on this list, and I say that because Dimension Shifter is basically deck specific. Your deck has to be able to play this card. However, there are a lot of decks that can play this. There's anti-meta decks. There's decks like, I've seen some people like side this in Subterra. I've seen people side this, play this in Thunder Dragons before, you know, when we had Colossus, but you could still do it now. Shifter is one of those cards that people just side or main deck depending on their deck if they could support it. And it's amazing. It's a Macrocosmos that literally for till the end of the next turn, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. That's really strong. It makes it to where it really kind of hinders their plays. They want their spells and traps to go to the graveyard. You know, if Golden Boy leaves the field, he goes to the graveyard. If you were to discard him, he'd get banished because of Dimension Shifter. So it's basically like having Macrocosmos or Dimensional Fissure on the board. So the card is really strong. However, again, you have to remember your deck has to be able to support it. I wanted to get it out of the way on this list because it's probably going to be the least sided out of all these cards. But again, if your deck can support it, it's definitely a great card you can play. Next, I got Lancia. So Lancia goes in and out of formats. Card's really strong, obviously broken against Orcus, really good against Infernoid, any deck that banishes. This deck is not without its banishing, though. You guys already know this. The traps like to banish themselves in order to, you know, set other copies and stuff like that. So this card does give you that ability to be able to just Lancia them, and then it does, again, limit the plays that they have access to, whereas they would have a lot more going on if they weren't under Lancia. So Lancia, again, we might see more play. It's good as well against the Invoke card. So the Invoke cards obviously need Invocation to go off. They activate Invocation to, like, make a Macabre or Purgatrio. You drop this, it fizzles, and it's pretty strong. So Lancia, I think, is a solid option. I think we're actually going to see more Lancia in the format. We'll see what happens. It's not that good, obviously, against the Rock deck, but we're focusing on Eldlich right now, so I think Lancia is fine against that other deck. I mean, the only thing that Lancia could do against the Rock deck, if we're just being honest, is, I guess, stop Block Dragon, but honestly, that's just, I don't think it's worth the application to that. Now, for some reason, I don't know why this card isn't coming through on the EDO Pro, so little known fact, EDO Pro, you had to update it, and this is the updated one. For some reason, it's still not showing this card, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to see if I type it in, if I can find it right now, because it's supposed to be Denko Sekka. So, yeah, I don't know why, but for some reason it's not pulling up. But anyways, this is Denko Sekka. So, again, this is another specific card. It does eat your normal summon. However, if your deck can support it, this card's really strong. Because, obviously, you know, they set all their Conquistadors and all their trap cards to make their monsters in the back row. You summon Denko, committing your normal summon, and then you play the rest of your cards. If you special summon a lot, that's solid. And then that way they can't activate any of their set cards, so they can't get them in the graveyard. They can't banish them for more cards. And even if they did have them in the graveyard, they can't set anything due to Denko's effect. So, I think that's really strong. However, the problem is Golden Lord can get over this card, so that could be a problem, but if you are able to back it up with more monsters or cards of your own, it's pretty strong. Again, though, it is deck specific, but it's good not only against that deck, but against any kind of like Backrow deck. So I felt like I had to mention it. I felt that it's one of those cards that you might forget about, but it's still important to play, especially if your deck can support it. Next, this is a little different than the first video. So the first video I was back and forth. I was like, do I want to talk about hand traps? Do I not want to talk about hand traps? But I realized that in this specific matchup, cards like Ash and Crow are really strong. strong. Ash is awesome. Ash can stop these guys, especially because they special summon from the hand to the deck, so you can just Ash that. It's really strong. So I think that's really important. Also being able to add an Eldlich, so you're able to Ash that. You're able to just turn off all these cards with Ash, and I think that's really strong. Ash is a card that you're going to see in pretty much every deck this format. The Eldlich deck plays it itself because, of course, it's a zombie, so that has synergy there. But it's just good to know that you should be playing Ash this format. It should be in your main deck. I don't even think you would side deck Ash, but I had to put them there because you never know. Some people do side deck hand traps if their deck doesn't main deck it. And then, of course, the homie DD Crow. I say it every time I talk about the homie DD Crow. I think he just gets better each format. Like, I didn't think it was possible that such an old card could still see so much play, but Crow is insane. Crow, just Crow the Golden Lord. Literally Crow Golden Boy, and your match got so much easier. I'll tell you right now from my testing, this deck did give me a hard time. I took several losses to this deck when I was first playing against him because I didn't realize, like, my God, Eldlich is so strong. The Golden Lord is so strong. You know, what do I do? And, you know, then I realized, okay, cards like Crow, cards like Call by the Grave, these cards are going to be the cards I need. I need to be able to just get rid of the Golden Lord, and then with the Golden Lord God, yes, I'm still playing against traps and stuff, but it's not as scary as if you're staring down Golden Boy as well. Granted, if they play the Invoked engine, you have another engine to deal with, but again, you let the rest of your cards deal with that. Crow can also stop the Invocation from going off if you banish their Alistair and they don't have a copy in hand. So Crow, of course, has applications against so many matchups. It's not once per turn, so I think it's really, really strong against that deck, and it's a card you definitely should have somewhere in your main deck or side deck. So I had to talk about that. So that's pretty much all the main monsters. Cards like Nibiru, cards like Phantasmic, none of those cards are going to make this list. They don't summon that much. They don't commit link monsters and stuff like that. So you're not going to see any of that stuff here. These are just basically the main monster cards I wanted to talk about. On to the spells and traps. So Lightning Storm. Now here's the thing. You all know I love this card. However, I do not think this card is that great against this deck. The reason I say that is because Lightning Storm basically will just send all of them to the graveyard and they can banish and set more copies, or they can trigger them after Lightning Storm activates. So I only put this on here because of all the back row removal cards that we would talk about in this video, but I felt that I had to mention it just in case. I mean, it's not the best card, but what it will do if they don't trigger them in the back row is it basically can bait them out, I guess, or if they all get sent to the graveyard, even if they are setting them that turn, you know, based off the banishing and whatnot, it doesn't matter, because if you Lightning Storm them, you need to try to close out the game. So I think that I had to mention it, but again, I don't think it's one of the best cards at all against the deck, but again, I wanted to mention it. Same thing with Dark Ruler No More. So Dark Ruler No More, I go back and forth. I think specific decks only play this card, but you need this not only against a rock deck to turn off their board, but the reason why you need a Dark Ruler No More is because of the new Synchro build. So you guys might have known, but Cam Neal won the PPG championship. I think it was a players championship with Synchro Eldlich, and they put up a pretty crazy board, like Herald of the Arclight, Boral Sword Savage, and God knows what else. And you need to be able to just nuke the board. Like, you need to be able to get over the board, and that's where Dark Ruler and Lightning Storm come in. Like, you can Dark Ruler plus Lightning Storm everything and you're good to go. Again, it's probably situational, but I think Dark Ruler's fine, obviously against the rock deck, but it can have applications specifically against the Synchro build, because you need to be able to turn off that board because it is pretty strong. But I wouldn't put it in against like regular Eldritch Stun or anything like that. But again, I wanted to mention it for the sake of the video. Then more back row stuff. Cosmic Cyclone, obviously you want to banish the spells and traps. Obviously, you know, they can still trigger them, but it is good to be able to hit things like the Cursed Eldland, so that does come up. Being able to banish the counter trap is important too. So there's all those situations where it might come up, so I wanted to mention it again. Call by the Grave, I think, is a huge all-star in this matchup. Again, just like DD Crow, maybe even better in the sense that you banish the Golden Lord. The Golden Lord is negated for the whole turn, plus it's banished. Like, that's just insane. Called is great going first or second, so I really like this card. I think this card is very, very solid, especially if your deck does main deck it. You already have a inherent advantage against the deck, so card's very strong. Twin Twisters is along the same line as Cosmic Cyclone and Lightning Storm. It's just for the back row. Just, it's hard to say if it'll be specific or not, but Twin Twister can still get rid of cards, and that can be a problem if they lose advantage, and if you can take advantage of them losing their back row, it becomes more important, so that can come up. And then this is a random one that someone mentioned to me. So basically at the battle phase, you do this and they can't activate them, and no cards can be activated in response to it. So basically, if you're trying to OTK them, I guess you anti-magic arrows. I haven't seen this card played in forever, but I mean, you guys can try it out. I know some people did have some success with it. I just don't know how good or how bad it'll be in this format. But again, it goes along with the spell and trap removal, as well as anything that stops the spell and traps. Along with that, I would probably add a Royal Decree. So I think this is another card that for some reason is not showing up in the system. Yeah, it's not showing up in the system. I don't know why, but we'll add through Royal Decree. So Royal Decree, basically is just for all the traps. It's kind of gimmicky. It's a really old school card, but you can play it, and I mean, if you might just get there. I mean, if they can remove it, they can remove it, but I mean, if you got it, you got it. Like, it's just one of those cards that I don't think a lot of people respect, so you actually could surprise an opponent with that card. Prohibition, you just call Golden Lord. A lot of people think it's gimmicky. It is, but calling Golden Lord, a lot of times, if you just stop them from summoning that card, it's pretty important. So I think Prohibition is not without its charm. Like, I would not sleep on this card. This card has seen success in the past, and I think it could see success again in any format, because if you know what to call with Prohibition, you're good to go. So call Golden Lord, and it's pretty solid. Evenly Match joins the cards like Lightning Storm, Dark Ruler, all those cards that try to get rid of stuff. What I like about Evenly, though, is it does banish everything. Granted, they can trigger their traps, but still being able to banish everything but one card, depending on when you activate it, is really important. Evenly is just a really good card in general. I think it's just a good generic side deck card to have for every format. People don't think board wipes are that good, but I think it's good for baiting negates. It's also good for trying to actually crack a board. Plus, you have to remember the Backrow decks that are still around, so I wanted to include it. Next, there can be only one. So I wasn't sure why this made the list. This is something some people suggested. I wasn't crazy about this card. I mean, granted, they go into a zombie. I think all these are zombies too, right? Like, all these guys are zombies as well, all the traps and whatnot. Let me see here. I'm pretty sure they are. Yeah, so basically you'd lock them into just like using one Golden Lord, I guess. And then you basically just have to go on a 1v1 battle against the Golden Lord. And then if your deck can support, there can only be one, like most stun decks do. You just kind of just get rid of it and then deal with it in that sense. So it's not that bad, actually. Or if they lock themselves into a trap, they can't summon Golden Lord because they're both the zombie. So it could come up. I just thought it would be worth mentioning. And then we already talked about Decree. And then, of course, the last card is Red Reboot. Granted, it's a one-of. It's unsearchable, but the beauty of Red Reboot is that you use it when it's game time. You literally, if you have an OTK deck like Mech Knight Invoked or any deck that just likes to OTK going second, you just Red Reboot through their traps and you just go ham, and hopefully that's enough to get you there. But that's everything I've got on this list, you guys. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, be sure to smash that like button. Let me know any cards I forgot. I'm sure there's plenty that I didn't mention, but these were the cards that we put together in the community tab, as well as some other people's input, and I really do appreciate it. But Eldlich Invoke, Synchro Eldlich, whichever build you want to play, whatever build you guys see floating around, any of these cards will do wonders for you when building a side deck. And it's just good to know that, you know, side decking is really important. You may have a rough game 1, but your side deck can bring you back in games 2 and games 3. So that's why I think videos like this are really important. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.